Hey everybody, it's your boy Captain Hunter from Captain Hunter's Podcast. Thank you so much for checking out this particular video over here on LMH Consulting Services, right? So this is where we're talking about all things related to law enforcement, all that. Thank you so much. Make sure that you hit that rate, subscribe, and share button. And let's make it do what it's got to do, and let's make sure the show is going and growing. So it's been a little bit between my last video. And that's because I've just been really busy. I did want to talk about the Acorn incident, and there's been a couple of other incidents that's been going on. The Acorn with the police officer who felt an acorn or heard an acorn fall, and then emptied his clip into a police car that he had somebody locked in, and all this kind of crazy nonsense, right? So that does not do good for public relations regarding police and all that. It just continues to erode public trust in the police. But anyway, we're going to here to talk about P. Diddy and the excessive force claims that he has, one of his children's mother is alleging in the incident in the search warrant that was executed. So Stephen A. Smith is going to talk about this a little bit, and then I'm going to give my professional opinion about this. And there's two different shows that we're going to talk about. So the first one. So this is actually the first one we're going to look at, and then we're going to go back to his interviewing of a lawyer, and we're going to kind of analyze this. And I'm looking at it from a law enforcement perspective, trying to give law enforcement ideas and try to bridge the divide, and why people may have wrong perceptions about what police can and cannot do, and was just an act of overreach. So let's get into it. Let's listen to a little bit about what Stephen A. Smith has to say. Now I'm going to play this. But I often get strikes for things, so I'm going to freeze frame and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to hear it, but I'm going to have it. But I'm going to have the freeze frame because I'm trying to avoid strikes. I don't know, but Stephen A. is really big about that. And I didn't even know he had his own show. I know he had a podcast, but I didn't know he had his own show. I don't know where this is at or anything like that. So if you can find it, make sure you watch it. Go subscribe to him on his podcast, all that kind of stuff. So here we go.
On to the latest in the criminal investigation of Sean P. Diddy Combs. Misa Hilton, the mother of Combs' son, Justin Combs, is speaking out after federal agents raided the home of the music mogul March 25th. On Tuesday, Hilton shared an edited video on Instagram of home surveillance footage of law enforcement entering the LA property, fanning out across the home with guns drawn, searching for evidence. Both of Diddy's sons, Justin and Christian, can be seen in the video being detained and handcuffed in a hallway inside the home before they're taken outside. Hilton claims her son has hired an attorney to investigate, quote, the excessive use of force, and vowed to fight for justice utilizing every imaginable resource. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Here's the reason why.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about that. So in the allegation, I guess that they're planning to file is that they are alleging excessive use of force. Now, excessive use of force. Here's the thing about police use of force: the mere fact that a police officer shows up at your door is a use of force. And I mean, by police officer, I'm talking about any federal agents, FBI in this case, Homeland Security. I'm talking about Border Patrol agents. I'm talking about anybody with the power in this particular instance to execute a search warrant, state police, sheriffs, deputies, etc. Even parole and probation officers, right? They all have the ability to, under different circumstances, to use to execute a search warrant. And that's what this was, right? The use of the term raid is really kind of I mean, it demonstrates a show of force, right? If we're talking about, it's incumbent in the word, and inherent in the word raid, that if we're going to raid someone, that we're going to kick in a door and we're going to have guns blazing and all this type of thing. So in this particular case, I got some stills up, or at least I got some stills up, and so you can see that there is a level of force. Now, again, let me get back to the talk about force and the level of force. A police officer's mere presence, mere showing up, is a show of force, right? So you call the police, or you're walking down the street, or police come up to you and they say, "Hey, sir, ma'am, please, take your hands out of your pockets, X, Y, and Z." They are demonstrating a show of force. They might not have put their hands on you. They might not have may not have pulled out their taser or pulled out their pepper spray or had their canine present. Doesn't take any of that. Their mere presence is a show of force. You call the police on your boyfriend or on your girlfriend who refuses to leave your apartment. The police show up. They're really, really nice. Everything's going very cordial, and you're packing your bags to go to your mother's house, to go to your friend's house for the night or whatever. You have been forced out of your home. The police may not have touched you. They may not have threatened you, but the mere fact that she called the police, he or she called the police, and that they showed up, you have been forced out of your home, period. So in this particular case, when we take a look at the Sean Combs incident, the raids, the execution of search warrants at his home in LA and Miami, I believe that they happened simultaneously. And even when Diddy was stopped at the airport and his phones were confiscated, this is all, or whatever electronics they took, this is all a show of force. It's all a show of force. So the allegation by one of the children's mother is that it was excessive. So the question, we're gonna hear this in another interview that we're gonna play in the lawyer with the lawyer, is that this was excessive in the fact that did you do this to Harvey Weinstein? Did you do that? Did you do this to any other high-profile celebrity that you came to their homes and you had guns blazing, you're pointing these weapons at people's heads, et cetera, et cetera? That is what the question is going to be, and that's what they're going to allege in their affidavits and whatever court filings that they're going to do, is that in any other circumstance that you would not have acted in this particular way. Now, in order to get this level of show of force, it would be my estimation that the police would have had to have demonstrated that the home and the occupants of the Diddy residence posed a serious and substantial threat to the lives and the safety of the responding Homeland Security agents or officers. That's the threshold. Why did you need to show up with tanks? Why did you need to show up with military gear? Why did you need to point the guns in these individuals' faces? Why was it more than just a routine search and seizure warrant where, hey, we knock on the door and just go in? Is it because there was allegations of drug use? And any officer will tell you where there's drugs, there's going to be guns, period. Were there any allegations of weapons in the house? So they would have to substantiate that, whether they did it in court records. I'm sure that they planned out the execution of the raid. They had building blueprints and know whatever they could know, right, to get all this type of information. It's obviously done in a simultaneous coordinated entrance, and they're going to knock and announce or whatever they did in the same manner at the same time in both locations. So the coordination and the hiding of evidence, or the destruction of evidence, or the hiding of weapons, or whatever else would have warranted this type of escalation of the use of force, because it is an escalation of the use of force. Again, officer's mere presence is force. The moment they point their gun at you is another level of force up. Well, the actual pulling of the trigger would be deadly force, but the mere threat of it is another show of force. An officer taking out his pepper spray and starting to shake it up and say, listen, either you do what I'm going to say or I'm going to tase you. An officer pulling on his taser and saying, listen, turning it on, letting the little red dot go cycle on the floor, on the ground or whatever, and saying, listen, you do what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to take, you are being forced to comply with the commands and the demands of the officers. So the mere fact that these individuals, that the officers showed up to the scene, demonstrated a heightened level of force above their mere presence, is going to be questionable as whether that was excessive. That's the question. So Stephen A. Smith is going to go on here and talk about in the era of police killing unarmed black men, and this is all, we can debate this another time. The police officers killing unarmed black men, the police officers, slamming people into doors, pushing individuals, talking roughly to individuals, all that kind of stuff, right? Stephen A. is going to come of the opinion that those things are bad, yes, but this ain't it. And I'm saying that this could be it. Stephen A. is not a legal expert. He had a lawyer on, and he's not a law enforcement expert. But I'm saying that it could be it. I'm saying that if they can demonstrate that in similar circumstances, that Homeland Security has not taken this type of level of scrutiny, then it could be, or precautions, then it could be. If Homeland Security, which is, and I would assume, I look for the affidavit and all that kind of stuff, I would assume that they're looking for evidence of sex trafficking, which I believe was the reason for the search warrant. If they're looking for that, they had to tie that known sex traffickers in some way, shape, form, or fashion in these similar circumstances are known to harbor weapons, carry weapons, and may in fact get in shootouts with the police. That's what they would have to demonstrate. And is it normal? Does the Homeland Security always perform these types of raids with this military style of policing and hardware? Never mind the fact that part of the George Floyd protests and requests was the demilitarization of the police, right? Never mind that. And here we have the federal agents themselves engaging in this. That's a discussion for another day. But that's what it is. So let's listen to Stephen A., who's not an expert, but he's saying good luck with that in a sarcastic tone. Good luck with that. But let's hear his opinion, and then we'll go over to the lawyer and we'll take a look at what she has to say about this.
In the age of brutality on the part of some police officers from Homeland Security busting into the home, guns drawn, obviously not a good look. Obviously a bit excessive, to say the least, in terms of the optics. When it comes to excessive force, simply grabbing your sons and putting them in handcuffs and peaceably taking them outside. In an age and a day where unarmed black men have been shot and killed, at the very least assaulted on several occasions, this doesn't meet the standard. So good luck with that. Knock yourself out. That's not the story. The story here is, what were they looking for? None of us know. P. Diddy, rumors of sex trafficking and what have you. These are the kind of things that are going on, where his name is being associated with everybody from Harvey Weinstein to the late Jeffrey Epstein to R. Kelly himself. That's the issue. I don't know P. Diddy that well. I'm wishing him nothing but the best. I swear, I hope he's innocent. I hope all of this is nothing more than an investigation that doesn't have his name attached to anything in line with something that you're guilty of illegal activities in any way.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it off right there, and that's obviously his opinion. Listen, we're all innocent until proven guilty, and I'm sure that he will have his day in court. As far as I know, that as I record this, he has not been arrested yet. Or I don't even know if he's in the country anymore, or, I heard all different type of things. So, so that's what that is. We'll leave it off right there. But I want to get to the lawyer and have her kind of discuss her point of view about this. And he had a lawyer on to talk about this. Okay, so once again, I'm going to do the freeze frame thing here and allow the lawyer and Stephen A. to have their conversation. I am claiming fair use. Let me try to get a little bit more of Stephen A. here. Let me move this stuff around here so I can get Stephen A. here. Yeah, so I am claiming fair use. I'm using this for educational purposes, all that. So, yeah, so he's got a lawyer on here. He'll introduce her, and we'll go from there. But I am more interested in her breakdown of the civil rights violations. She is a civil rights attorney, and we have to take a serious look at any type of civil rights violations that may have that she would allege would have gone on. So here we go.
Moving on to the legal case involving Sean P. Diddy Combs, the Bad Boy Entertainment CEO has been hit with five lawsuits since November of 2023, accusing him of sexual assault, sexual trafficking, and engaging in criminal activity. Last week, federal agents raided his homes in Los Angeles and Miami. Combs was not at either location, but his sons, Justin and Christian, were detained and handcuffed. during a raid of his home in Los Angeles. No one better to talk to about this matter than my next guest. She is obviously a legal expert for CNN. She's a best-selling author. She's a civil rights attorney, a commentator, obviously, for CNN. Like I said, the one and only Areva Martin. How are you?
Fantastic.
The word fantastic certainly can be applied to Sean P. Diddy Combs right now. So many people have looked at the situation, and they said, this looks bad, but somehow, some way, it might be all pomp and circumstance, just a manner in which to embarrass him. Obviously, you know in the law the way that you do, how serious are these allegations and how much trouble is Sean P. Diddy Combs in?
Well, the Homeland Security is not raiding your home to embarrass you. So let's just disabuse ourselves of that notion. Now, whether he actually gets charged, we don't know, because so far there are no criminal charges that have been filed against him. But clearly, there was enough evidence to present to a magistrate judge to get search warrants to go into his home and to confiscate, matters from his home. We were told, or
And that's an important point right there that I want to emphasize, that in order to get a search warrant, you need two affiants. You need to show proof, show cause, that you are looking for something in particular, and that something is in this particular place, time, and location. So they were looking for something or some things specific, and they had to know and prove that those things were there at this particular date and this particular time, and they had to do that for both Miami and his California home. So a magistrate had to be convinced in both of those locations, a Miami judge or Florida judge, wherever he lives, and the California judge. Both of those magistrates, judges, whoever they bring their warrants before, their search warrants before, had to be convinced. They had to read it over and say, hey, look, this is convincing. There's based on these warrants, based on these affidavits, based on these words that are on this piece of paper, there is enough evidence. I am convinced that there is possibly enough evidence that a crime has been committed, and the evidence or the fruits of this crime are in this particular location, or something along those lines. So that is very, very important. So this is just not the police just picking on people. This is not just the police or law enforcement. I'm using all the same thing. Law enforcement, police are just kind of picking on him. Maybe they read over these different civil documents. The civil documents mean nothing in the criminal cases. You still have to bring some other separate evidence. People can allege anything they want, but somebody along the way would have had to have corroborated or confirmed what was in there. Maybe the police or Homeland Security in this instance had some phone calls with some people. Maybe they were aware of some things. Maybe they dug through his trash or whatever they did in order to get some evidence, and that was presented to the magistrate, and they were convinced. Let's continue on.
matters from his home. We were told, or media reports, that there were electronic devices and other things taken away from his home, and that he was even stopped in an airport in Miami, and things were, phones, I imagine, were confiscated from him. So all very serious, nothing that anyone would want to happen to them. Obviously, his lawyer is denying any wrongdoing. He's categorically denied all of the charges that have been lodged against him in those civil complaints. But I think it's too soon for anyone to know what's going to happen in this case from a criminal standpoint. We already know civilly he's paid some settlement amount to Cassandra Ventura Cassie. And there are other ex-girlfriend, other civil lawsuits that are pending, seeking millions of dollars in compensation. So, and he's lost a lot of his business opportunities, and people have walked away from him, as people tend to do when those kind of allegations are made against you.
What are we to make of the fact that it was Homeland Security, Miami, Los Angeles, respectively, as opposed to just the LAPD or the local police department? What are we to make of the fact that Homeland Security is the ones who raided both homes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Homeland Security has a specific unit that focuses on sex trafficking. And if you look at those civil complaints that have been filed, that term, those allegations of sex trafficking come up numerous times throughout those civil lawsuits. So I think what we are to make of it, to the extent we can read anything into the raids, is that they have something to do, or likely have something to do, with sex trafficking.
What do you make?
Yeah, so That is a very, very valid point. And generally, Homeland Security, and I've taught some sex trafficking courses. They would take these types of scenarios, sometimes the FBI, but usually there's evidence of cross or interstate um, trafficking allegations. So yeah, so police departments may deal with it when it's just routine homegrown type of situations. But if they're crossing state lines and it gets complicated, then they give it to the federal agents. So um, so let's continue on with this. I'm not going to play all of this, but I do want to. There's a couple more salient points here.
Of the fact that they put his children in handcuffs and escorted them out of his home. Yet when they found him in Miami, he was en route to the Bahamas. They just questioned him, took his cell phone or what have you, but just questioned him and no arrests were made.
You know, I'm always curious or suspect or concerned when you see that kind of militarized force show up at someone's home. We saw those tanks, and as you said, his kids standing outside with handcuffs. You always have to question, you know, what role does race, what role does the fact that this is a black man have to do with the way the raid was carried out? I think we have, you know, talked.
So I gotta echo that. Just today, as a matter of fact, and I wasn't even reading about this case. I was just kind of happened to be flipping through YouTube and I saw this. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to comment about this. But yeah, just today, I was reading some different court cases, some different studies that were done about this type of thing, where, particularly in jury situations, where there's just different treatment for black men. And again, is this a case where this is going on? Right? Is this? You have to, again, in order for this lawsuit that's going to be alleged that this is a case of excessive force, they're going to have to prove that in similar circumstances, Homeland Security has not engaged in the same type, and that it was excessive and over top given the set of circumstances, or what they would call the totality of the circumstances. Do we usually show up with tanks? Do we usually show up with all these different personnel? Do we usually have this type of coordinated search warrant activity? You have to demonstrate that, because it's not fair if other individuals, they talked about Harvey Weinstein, they talked about Jeffrey Epstein, and all these other individuals, right? And even people that we don't know about. Are they still approached in the same manner? And if you just did this because he's a music mogul, if you just did this to quote unquote embarrass him, if you just did this because you have to prove that you believe that there were weapons on the premises and that there was going to be a certain level of resistance, and that would be my threshold. You have to have some reasonable level of certainty. Otherwise, every single search warrant should be done in this way. Every time there's a search warrant for stolen socks, every time there's a search warrant for drugs, every time there's a search warrant for a bank robbery, you have to show up with tanks and all that kind of thing. You should not differentiate because he's a male, because he's black. That would be problematic for me.
Talked a whole lot in the last several years in this country about the way that the police departments around this country are using military equipment to engage with people who are not engaged in a war. So I didn't like that show of force. It seemed to be heavy-handed. It seemed to be unnecessary, given that they knew he wasn't home. They knew where he was, right? Because they confronted him in the airport. And I don't think there were any.
Well, they did know that somebody was home. They knew that somebody was home, so they understood that. I'm going back and forth because but they knew somebody was home. So he doesn't have to be home, but they had to believe that some level of force is necessary. Again, as I demonstrated. So that's the standard. So.
Or any real concerns about violence or anyone in the home shooting at the law enforcement agency. So. That part of it disturbing to me. I'm always concerned as a civil rights lawyer about whether somebody's civil rights were being violated, and particularly the issue of race. We can never ignore that. But clearly, as I said, there had to be something in those probable cause statements presented to the magistrate that caused them to say, hey, there's some evidence in there that is going to perhaps lead to some kind of indictment, some kind of criminal charges, etc. And one thing, Stephen, that was particularly important is in the last lawsuit filed by the producer, Mr. Jones, Rodney Jones.
Yes.
He talks about cameras. He says that if you are in Sean Combs' home, he has cameras everywhere, and he's watching everyone that's having sex throughout his home. So obviously, my mind tells me one of the things they were probably looking for are those cameras, film footage from those cameras. So I think we can take some cues from some of those lawsuits.
Jones allegedly, his former employee, obviously that has alleged sex trafficking, sexual assault, amongst other things, involving underage girls in the 79-page lawsuit. You just alluded to that. People are looking at P. Diddy right now, and folks who are skeptical, who are cynical, who can dare I say be cruel, attaching guilt where there's nothing proven as of yet, are calling him the Jeffrey Epstein of hip hop. Mm-hmm. When you bring up the name Jeffrey Epstein, who committed suicide,
I'm going to fast forward it here. I'm not interested in any of that.
Suicide in 2019, 35 days after he was arrested on sex trafficking charges and what have you. You talked about the show of force that they put out for all of us to see. Do you recall the Jeffrey Epstein situation going down in a similar fashion?
I do not.
And this is exactly my point, right? This is exactly my point. Is you have to be consistent in your level of escalation of force. Now, if there's circumstances, just be able to articulate that. That's all that the law enforcement would need. But it's not a good look, and I agree with the lawyer here. But let's see what she has to say.
What I recall about Jeffrey Epstein is lots of folks knew what he was engaged in, and there were efforts to hold him accountable in Florida, even before his the last arrest, I should say, where he was incarcerated or in jail. Or he's in jail waiting, a trial on those serious charges before he committed suicide. I don't remember tanks rolling up to his mansions. Might have happened, not sure, but I don't personally remember it. I think in this era, this MeToo era, women in particular are unforgiving of these kinds of allegations. And particularly if there is any evidence about underage girls, I think it's a wrap. We learned from R. Kelly, from this, unless there is some proof that all of these allegations are categorically false. And that's not typically what you see in these cases, particularly in the civil cases. We see what we saw in Cassie's case, a quiet settlement, a non-disclosure agreement, and it kind of goes away. But the allegations haven't gone away. The lawsuit has gone away. We don't know what they settled for, but he's never been exonerated from the allegations that Cassie has made. So I think this is a different era. I think in this era, those kinds of allegations can be the death knell of your career. If this was an actor, the chances of him acting in another movie, I think, would be slim to none. Producers would be afraid to touch him. Other actors don't want to be, in proximity or be on.
That's why you got to keep your reputation clean. Michael Vick still hasn't recovered, right? They besmirched Kobe when he died. Just you'll never recover from this stuff. You never recover, and that's why it's another discussion for another time. But particularly men, you never recover from this. You'll never recover. Big time CEOs of companies. That's why. I might actually put this on another podcast here. But that's why. That's why they engage in not wanting to be around ladies a lot of times. You don't want your reputation ruined like this. So, actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it there. She's talking about that, and I'm gonna talk about that on a different podcast. That is the parameters concerning the use of force. We'll see if the lawsuit comes out of that. But I disagree with Stephen A. It may be a problem, and the lawyer, I think, backs me up. It may be a problem that if you're not doing these things for other high-profile individuals or even low-level individuals. Well, let me not say low level, because sometimes it's the low level people who get the most attention and get the most brutality, right? We always, in law enforcement, we used to always joke about, or my PD in particular, we used to always joke about, right? The guy who's who's a murderer, they get what we would call the perp walk, right? They would be handcuffed in the front and walk outside, right? And detectives are in the perp walk, so they get their pictures taken and all that kind of stuff, right? And in the meantime, right, the guy who's who's accused of going for a joyride, taking without owner's permission, taking a motor vehicle without owner's permission, or some minor charge, is handcuffed in the back and got leg shackles on and all kind of stuff, right? And he's transport. That's how he or she is transported to court. So it's the low level people that often get the most attention. So, is this a case of law enforcement in this state, in this particular case, overstepping their bounds, pointing guns, and doing everything without the knowledge, without warrant for it, without reason for it? If not, they got a problem. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions. Much love and peace, everyone.